I actually think Microbial Shroud is very good. I'm unironically saying I think Microbial Shroud is very good. I know that sounds a little bit strange. After actually effectively playing it in a bunch of games, turns out the key to making Microbial Shroud work is Ultralisks, okay? Like no, but seriously. Okay, if you're not very good at the game, like me, right? Or you're like worse than me, right? You should consider playing Hydra, Ultra, Infestor. And unironically play Microbial Shroud. So I could go for a German taxi. I could go for a Nidus cheese. I could do a variety of things here. But I'm gonna do the scariest of them all. I'm gonna go ahead and play like a man. There's a couple of High Templar in there. Baby, nice. So if you want to play perfect late game, you gotta like have 7 hands and like, you know, go full Serral on these dudes. But you need like 600 plus APM and it's really f***ing hard. Microbial Shroud is actually pretty good. You should never really be able to get abductions in. Like, at least in theory, right? Like, no one plays this game perfectly. But look, I can show you. The way that you should position your Skytles army is that your High Templar should always be a little bit in front of the rest of the Skytles army. Look, let's get like a carrier in here, and let's get a High Templar in here. And then on the other end, we have a Viper, right? So the way you want to usually position this, like say you want to be moving from left to right as a carrier player over here, you need to try and have your High Templar in the front, but not so far in the front that they get easily killed by lurkers. So say, for example, I want to try and feedback this thing. It should never happen, because there should always... Or sorry, like I want to abduct that thing. It should never happen. So this thing has more range. So you can see over here, do you see the little circle on the ground? See the feedback range over there? And then we have the range on abduct. It should never happen because like feedback is instant and this is like a little yoink, right? At least in theory. But if you want to control late game Skytles well, it's actually tricky though. Like all jokes aside, you should have a couple Tempest probably in there and a bunch of these things and a bunch of these things. So here's what like a really good Protoss late game army would look like, right? Give or take, roughly. If you want to do this well, like there should actually be like an Oracle in here as well. So usually what you want to do with the Oracles is you want to be tagging the Zerg's army so your Tempest can deal damage at maximum range or they can go after the Spore Crawlers, right? So these should be on separate hotkey groups. Mothership also needs a separate hotkey group because its turn rate is super slow. So if you're like not having it, like if you have it on your main army hotkey group, it's always going to end up getting abducted, right? Because say we want to go over there and then we have to all of a sudden make that move. That's an abduct right there. Same over here, like say you want to go all of a sudden back. Like that's an abduct over there, right? So you want to have the High Templar leading. You want to have the carriers and the mothership, you know, close together but not on top of each other. And then you, like, how do you hotkey this? If you want to play it real well, late game Skytles is actually very tricky to do well. I guess where the most frustration lies is that if you want to do this reasonably well, right? You want to play this at like 80% efficiency. All you really need to do is attack move and just storm the hell out of whatever the f is close, right? That's what you really need to be doing. But if you want to be playing it perfectly, it's actually really hard. Like you could control click over here and then try and control click, you know, whatever you reveal. But it's a little unreliable. What's control click? Select all of like the kind on the screen. Some people use double click. That's bad, okay? If you use double click, stop using it today and start control clicking instead. Okay, let me show you, right? This is actually like something that I take 100% for granted, but it's actually super important. So say you have a bunch of Marines and a couple Marauders, right? And a few Medivacs, right? A couple Medivacs, and we have Stimpack and Combat Shield. So say this army is running around and you want to select only the Marauders, or you want to like control click the Medivacs back, or like select the Medivacs to go back, right? It's tricky if you double click, because then you got to actually stay on. Like I'm trying to double click right now. There you go, I got it. It's hard to double click because if the target is moving, you just can't really select them well. It's actually very unreliable. Like I'm trying to do it right now and it doesn't work. Alternatively, you can hold down control on the keyboard and just do a single click. And that's, like, by far the best way to do it. This is what everyone uses at a reasonably high level. The fact that you can't even double click is very annoying, actually. Like, they should not even have had that in a game. Lowko, you just blew my mind. Yeah, like, someone had to tell me this as well. Like, it's not so obvious. If you are, like, a boomer and you used to play RTS games back in the day, which is where they all use double click, just switch over to, like, control and then singular clicks. You can do the same thing as well at the bottom of the screen. So say, for example, you want to select all Marauders here, even though you can't see them all. You can hit control on the keyboard and then click the selection here at the bottom to select all Marauders. Only works, obviously, if you don't, you know, if you have like 10 more Marines here, that doesn't work. But then you could even go to second tab over here and select all the medivacs. StarCraft 2's responsiveness actually is probably what makes it so good. Maybe unit design can be a bit shaky from time to time, right? Like Swarm Host, right? Pretty lame. But yeah, there's quite a bit. Lowko, 20 years of double clicking. There you go. Now, one thing you can also do, which might also blow some people's mind, is that you can hold down both Control and Shift at the same time. And then, for example, click the Marauder here in the bottom of the screen. What that's going to do is select all Marauders and then deselect them. Right? So here's what we do. We hold down Control and Shift, click the Marauder, move the rest of the army that way. That was effectively 2 actions. These are things that they don't really explain in the game very well. But this is used all the time. Okay, last one. Okay, last one. This is what they added a couple years ago only, so it's relatively new. Like, in StarCraft terms, it's relatively new. I can use the control hotkey, right? So if I hit control +1 right now on the keyboard, you can see the number changes over here as I recreate hotkey number 1 and put all of my current selection into hotkey number 1. I think everyone knows that. Control +1. Another thing that a lot of people might not be aware of is that there is a difference between Shift +1 and Control +1. So Shift +1 either creates hotkey 1 if it doesn't exist yet, or it adds units to the existing hotkey group of 1. So if I select these Marines over here, look at the number over here, right? And I click Shift +1, it's going to add 8 new units to that existing hotkey group of 1. Now here's what they added with Legacy of the Void. Say, for example, you want to send part of this army back, but you want to leave a couple of Marauders behind to finish off a base or something, right? So we're moving over in this direction, we're fighting. I can select part of this army, hit Alt +2 on the keyboard, which is going to remove them from every hotkey group that they're currently in and add them to the hotkey group of 2. So, say we're going over here, there's a Nexus, I select this, I back off with the rest of the army. Notice now how the 2 army hotkeys here are split up. This may seem like big brain stuff, but it becomes very fluent if you're like playing with it for a while. Lowko, I used Control Alt Delete. Alright, here's another thing that a lot of you might not be aware of if you're like relatively new to the game. If you have a bunch of Marines, right, instead of a medevac, and you want to unload them on your opponent's side of the map, you can send the command over here, unload all, which is hotkey C for me, and I can click over there, and what's going to happen is that the units are going to fly over there, and then they unload. If I, however, move the medevac, it's going to stop unloading the current command, right? Because the command is then no longer unload, but it's the command to move. What you can also do is this. I hope that someone's mind is blown with this sort of stuff. This might not be something that, you know, everyone knows of. You can move units out of a medevac by clicking the unload all button on one individual medevac. You can, for example, boost into your opponent's main base, C-click on the thing, and then start gunning down the mineral line, right? While constantly unloading more stuff. You just have to click the unload button and then select the individual dropper thing. This works for Baneling drops. This works for War Prisms. It works for everything. Do I have to click every medevac if I have more than one? Yes. So if you want to do this on multiple medevacs, you gotta specifically click the ones that have the units in them. So it can be a little tricky. You can also just spam click it, and then you might mostly get it. That's what I tend to do in all honesty. I think that's what everyone does, to be honest. How do you rapidly pick up units? Oh, for rapidly picking up units, you can just have them all, and then you just shift click between the different things. So again, you could rapid fire it. Yeah. So, okay, so say I want to, for example, have all of these units load up into these medevacs. I can select all of these units like that, right? And then just boost the medevacs over this. Except for that. Screw you, dude. Nobody liked you. No, but, oh, no, he got in there. He was still chasing. He hoards this knowledge until 10 years in? No, mate. I've made multiple videos on this subject. What about putting drones in gas? No magic there. You just select them and right-click. How do you select all of one kind from the whole map? So that's where the all army hotkey comes in. It doesn't work in this mod, but you can basically... I can show you, I guess, by selecting all my units over here. That's where the all army hotkey is very useful. Okay, so this is my whole thing, right? So you could kind of do this by hitting the all army hotkey, right? Or you could do that better by hitting the all army hotkey. You can control-click one of the selected units here at the bottom of the screen, which is going to select all of that one kind. This is why there is use to having the all army hotkey bound. And why I do recommend you have it hotkeyed again at some point, but initially you probably want to play without it. This is what people, for example, use when they're playing double Stargate Phoenix openers, right? Like, you actually kind of need an all army hotkey for the double Stargate Phoenix. So usually the way it works, say you have two Stargates over here, you have them right-clicked on top of your existing Phoenixes already. So all of your newly made Phoenixes will automatically fly towards the existing Phoenixes, right? So what most Protoss players will do in those kind of scenarios is whenever they hear like, "To the wings of justice," or whatever the f those things say, right? You hit the all army hotkey, you control-click the Phoenixes at the bottom, and then you recreate their existing control group. So that way, like, your newly made Phoenix is going to be added to the same hotkey group. Does that make sense? Yeah, it works the same way for Mutalisks like that. Exactly. So, like, you probably want to play for a while without the all army hotkey, and then play with it again. However, you don't want to fall into the trap where that's your main way of hotkeying things. How to split the medevacs with units from the medevacs without units quickly? You can do that. How do you do that, Drone Rush? Is that a thing? Let's say you want to drop. I just always select the medevacs that have units in them. You can select only the ones that have units in them? Oh! Oh, that's actually pretty clever. So I can hit click over there and then only... Oh, hey, that's actually pretty good. That's actually a very good point. So, yeah, apparently if you have a bunch of medevacs, some with units into them and some without, you can hit unload all, and then the only ones that have units in them can have that command, because these don't have that command in the first place. That's actually pretty clever. I never considered that.
Ready for pickup? Where's the emergency?
So, this is most applicable, I guess, for Terran. The others are not really... But look, like the medevacs that, you know, don't have units in them don't have an unload all command, so you could, like, select over there, and then go continue with these. That's pretty clever. It applies to Zerg if you go Ventral Sex. Yeah. But I mean, you can just select the overlords at that point, right? Because you already put those aside. The easiest way to show you the selecting and deselecting is probably in Ling Bane Wars. Red player over here has a bunch of Banes. Blue player does not, right? What I can do is I can click on one of these, and then deselect one Zergling at the bottom of the screen, and then right-click everything back. So the way that works is that I right-click on one of these Banelings, I deselect one Zergling by holding down Shift, I click once at the bottom of the screen, and then I right-click everything back. So basically everything over here is all the units that I've gotten in this selection over here. Then I Shift-click on one of these. One of them gets deselected. I don't know which one it is. Sometimes it's one in the back, which kind of sucks. If you want to do it more reliably, you could do it by selecting one on the screen, but that's much harder. So I tend to do it just by... And ideally, obviously, you pull back at the last possible moment, right? But that's where the ping and whatnot comes into the play. And it's like still all about mouse accuracy. Oh yeah, one thing when it comes to being faster with the mouse, this is a common thing that I see quite a bit as well, is having too high of a DPI. I think you should not play with any more than 1200. 1200 DPI is more than enough. Seems like most people play with 800 to 1200 or so, like most of the StarCraft pros. It's a small thing, but the lower, the more accurate in general. Yeah, you need to get yourself a gaming chair, obviously. That's very critical. Look, I've seen streamers fast select 3 out of all workers in the mineral line by clicking in the control group down there. How did I do that? There's no magic there. Like, basically all you do is just select. Sometimes if you grab too many, and I think this is maybe what you see, sometimes if you grab too many, you can deselect one of them holding down shift at the bottom of the screen. Lowko, I bought a gaming chair, but I'm still in Bronze League. So, say I have a gas geyser over here, and I want to put units in them. I can select 3 like that, but now I have 1 too many, so we sent that one back. Alternatively, you can grab a couple, right? So you grab a couple, deselect the ones you need, and then hit the return minerals button as well. That actually went automatically, but say you have a bunch over here, they're all mining. You deselect the ones that you don't need. At some point, some of them might have minerals in their beaks. There's a return cargo button that you can press. By default, for me, it's Hotkey S, which returns their minerals to the hatchery. Most of the time, though, people will try and just grab 3. Or like, you know, grab 2 and then add a 3rd one. Or rally in from the minerals, or from like the you know, hatcheries instead. But there's not really a whole lot of magic here. It's just the same principles. You didn't know about the return button? Yeah, this is mostly just like, it's not not really that huge a deal. It's just that you can it works the other way around as well. So say you have one like drone in here that's got resources. If you want to send it back to minerals right now, it's gonna get rid of it. So you can instead click return cargo, and it will return to the previous command it had. But usually it will try and grab the ones though that have just finished their little trip. You can also shift Q, and yeah. I always hit that return button even when morphing a building. I think I shift Q most of the time. So say I need that one. Now I'm not sure actually. I don't know. I probably just select one that's close to the hatch so it's just finished its trip. Shift Q, as in like shift commands. Hold down shift. What does space do exactly? For me, space is my base camera hotkey. Most people don't use this anymore, to be honest, but if I make a couple hatcheries, I can show you. So there's a hotkey in the settings under global unit management and then base camera. Where is it? No, it's under camera. Yeah. By default, this is backspace. Yeah, backspace is not a very good hotkey. And you can rebound it to whatever you like. I've got it set to spacebar. I think by default, spacebar is like jump to most recent alert, which is kind of pointless. It doesn't work until the hatcheries are done though, so. But basically what it does is that it cycles between the different hatcheries or the bases that you have. So essentially what it means is like as the game goes longer, the more unreliable it becomes. So most of the time people will use camera hotkeys instead, where they can quickly switch between the different locations. But yeah. Yeah, meta right now is for people to use camera hotkeys to the different locations. So I use that all the time. Camera hotkeys are more reliable. Because say, for example, I see a drop coming in over at my 4th, I can immediately be there. Rather than like frantically hit my spacebar button and wait for it to accidentally go past the 4th base, if that makes sense. Jump to recent alert is useful, isn't it? When your workers are being attacked, for example. Yeah, but that's when you go F2, for example, if like units are in natural. I currently have 6 base camera hotkeys. So F1, F2, F3, F4, F5, F6. I have my all army hotkey bound to tilde, which is the key right next to 1. Not the 2, but the one to the left. All right, Luke, so here's base camera. But it's unreliable, right? Like, say, for example, I have 7 bases and I see, okay, units are coming in over there. I can either click the minimap, I can click base camera until it centers on that hatchery, or I can hit F3, which I know is going to be a camera hotkey that's always at that same location. Yeah, I was using F1 through 4. I only recently, a couple weeks ago, added F5 and F6 as well. I think I have F7 and F8 also set up, but I don't use those, to be honest. Yeah, I have them set up, but I found that 4 camera hotkeys is usually not enough for, like, most macro games right now. You need at least 5. Anyway, that was, yeah. I mean, I hope at least some people's minds, you know, got blown at least a bit. These are things that you take for granted when you play for a while. How do you center the camera onto the base before you bind the camera hotkey? So I first roughly bind them, and then when the hatchery gets built, I click the portrait, which is what I'm covering right over here, but like behind me. There's the portrait. I click that, and that centers on the base. So basically, I loosely set up F1 through F6, and then I click each individual base as they get built and remake the hotkey. You could be a programmer, right? Which is awesome. But that must be also very stressful because income is not as reliable, right? I wanted to do that at some point, but then I realized pro gamers are really good at the game, even when you Grandmaster League. Like right now, I'm far away from pro level. I'm not even close. Even though it may seem that the rank is rather close, pro gamers are way better. Like way better. Like really good. Like you have to be really good.